Hey there. Good morning. Anybody make it to bed last night? That's way too high. Anybody make it to bed last night? Yeah. Here till, I think Blake and I were talking till about 12 or so. Hour and a half debate went pushing 2 hours. And yeah, that was more than 2 hours that I think Trump would have liked to do without. So I'm just looking over the checklist, make sure that we're fully ready to go. All right, let's do it. So today, September 11th, on 99.1 WDJY, America1Radio.com. I include the UG.media because I don't know what episode they play on Tuesdays. We're only there 2 days a week. Rainbow Radio, Yerg's Radio, all the social media, and the rest of the Mastiff Media Network. I think there's still just a placeholder. Let me just type that in quick. Yeah, and that's my fault because he doesn't have any of the graphics and whatever else. So Mastiff.media will be a place where you can find any of the social media that is the rest of the Mastiff Media Network. Hang out to the end for morning motivation. Pierre's pot. I think they're actually, we're going to do this together because they're both kind of one. I know a lot of people won't agree with this choice. Pierre is for Pierre Robert of Philly. Philly is 93.3 WMMR. He does a thing where he takes what he calls a good citizen and toasts them with a cup of the morning sauce. And that's why you see a pot of coffee on the screen for those of you watching. For those who don't, there's Pierre's pot and, nice font. The coffee pot, which is already served some because there's some missing. And a nice flowery leaf. Well, leafy plant, better, colorful, which is not accurate, but you know what it is. And it's also very relevant to Pierre. We're also on Discord today via my phone. Not Discord, Chatter. I still don't have a desktop version for it. I want to try to help these people, especially now that we've signed a deal with WTAN. And as of probably next week, we'll be adding 4 more stations to our network. Their network will be added to our network. We'll probably start weekly and in conjunction with WWPR from Bradenton. And on that one day, without having to go to the internet, via terrestrial radio, we will have almost 5 million people in the entire Tampa Bay and Nature Coast. We'll go as far up north to Brooksville, maybe a little bit further, and as far south to Sarasota, and maybe a little bit further, depending on the weather, because they're both AM stations. And as far east as Lakeland, beyond Wesley Chapel, Polk City in Polk County, Sheriff Grady Judd, and Winter Haven, and almost all the way to Orlando. So we're growing. The show is 6 months old. The station's a year. I got to actually look that up because it's like the end of this month. It's actually this month that we started it. So we got to have a birthday party. So I guess we're actually going to do, because it's the same today, the morning motivation and Pierre's pot goes right into our 9/11 tribute. Pierre's pot is then President George W. Bush, who, as a result of at least some of his handling of the situation, enjoyed a 90% approval rating. No president ever had that high for any amount of time. And obviously, no president's also going to keep it for the entire time either. But yeah, that is something clearly we've never really dealt with the exception of maybe Pearl Harbor. But that was a military attack on a military installation with a lot fewer casualties. Anyway, so to start off with Pierre's pot, here it is, a toast of the morning sauce in your direction, President George W. Bush. I don't know if this air conditioner is that amazing, but my coffee gets cold almost instantly coming in here. So go right into the morning motivation, and actually, I'm going to do a little video action. I'm going to do a better. Yeah, whatever. The one streaming service I used to use, you could actually create a custom a layout for all this stuff, and I don't think that they allow you to do that. All right, well, whatever. So here is from George W. Bush National Archives from Ground Zero when he visited after the attack. Under 13.
I want you all to know. I want you all to know that America today is on bended knee in prayer for the people whose lives were lost here, for the workers who work here, for the families who mourn. This nation stands with the good people of New York City and New Jersey and Connecticut as we mourn the loss of thousands of our citizens. I can hear you. I can hear you. The rest of the world hears you. And the people who knock these buildings down will hear all of us soon. The nation sends its love, its compassion to everybody who is here. Thank you for your hard work. Thank you for making the nation proud. And may God bless America.
Courtesy of the George Bush Library and the National Archives, one of the things that got his approval rating pretty jacked up. I was actually the duty agent for the Philadelphia field office that day for the Secret Service. That was my first day as a duty agent. Tuesday, September 11th. Yeah, won't ever forget that. I was driving to a meeting. The two duty agents for the field office work in a room that's like a call center. And my partner, even though he was senior, who would usually do it in the evening when there's no bosses around because he's more experienced, he decided he asked to do the morning shift because he had an afternoon meeting with the U.S. attorney. And I had a morning meeting with the Exeter Township, Pennsylvania Police Department, or at the Exeter Township, with a bunch of law enforcement agencies from all around Berks County. And so I'm driving to that meeting. I get a phone call from a girl I was dating at the time. Yes, that actually happened. And she says a plane just flew in to one of the towers of the World Trade Center. I'm thinking, Cessna, something small, came out of a cloud, didn't realize where it was at, that kind of thing. Which is fine, because while there's obviously going to be considerable damage, the buildings themselves are built to be able to withstand that type of a hit. Sorry, my nose itches. And as we're talking, she says, wait, they're replaying it again. And she says, yeah, they just replayed when the plane flew into the building. And I said, what do you mean they replayed when the plane flew into the building? Why would there be a camera on it for that one event? Like, why? And you see where I'm getting at. And that's when we realized a second plane hit the other tower, because she was then also able to see that the first plane and the explosion that already happened was still causing considerable fire. So then I knew something was going on. We get issued a car in the Secret Service that we take home with us. So when something crazy like this happens, perhaps in the middle of the night, or regardless if we have to go directly onto location for something, for us, it would be more like a threat on the president, an arrest by local or state police or another federal agency, on a case that we have, one of our suspects got arrested, and now we kind of, game is out. We gotta go talk to that person. That could be, as Hillary Clinton suggested, at 3 a.m. Oh God, sorry, the coffee's working its way back up. That could be at 3 o'clock in the morning. We got to go. And a lot of those cases, we don't have the opportunity to go to the office first, get a car, and then go to the police station. So they give us cars to take home. And they're essentially unmarked police cars. There is a radio that has all our frequencies on it. Some cities, they give you the local police frequency if they've got that relationship to have that. And then, of course, also some level of emergency lights. So I turned my lights on and hightailed it to the Exeter Township Police Department. And, of course, they were waiting. They knew I was coming. They knew others were coming. And, it was definitely an interesting day. And they were already, those who were there already, were already in a conference room with a television, watching as things unfolded. And it was there that I remembered that my classmates in the New York field office were in the tower. That's where the field office was, in one of the smaller buildings around the tower, around in the complex, around, you know, at the bottom of one of the other two larger towers. So, you know, we're sitting there, you know, watching all this, and of course, my pager's going crazy because we did an emergency recall. What that is, the big boss, the special agent in charge, says to one of the other bosses, start the recall, which in a situation like that was probably already started because that was an obvious. And that boss filters down, and they send a message to all the squad bosses, call your people, have them call back in, have them check in. And so at that time, all we had were pagers. That was it. We didn't have two-way pagers yet. That would come a little bit later. We didn't have mobile phones. We had a phone card from Sprint, and we could go to a payphone and call the office with that, or use somebody's desktop and call the office with that. Now we finally have decent mobiles. When I left, they were iPhones. So I check in. I'm alive. I think my boss said, finish your meeting and then get here, only to be sent home. Because what the intelligence community learned was that there were multiple planes with terrorists on board, and that the tower, and by now also the Pentagon, were not the only ones. So everything was grounded, as you probably remember, nationwide, everything. Not a flight for like the next week. People were stuck at airports. People were stuck in other cities. People were stuck at connecting airports. They weren't even at the place they needed to go, but they weren't also at the place they started. And for like a week. Actually, it was more than that. So I would do the meeting, go to the field office, and everybody was like puckered. You know, nobody really knew what was going on. Especially agents. You know, we heard what we think we heard our bosses saying when they were talking to the bosses. And so we quietly make our way to desks of our buddies and say, here's what's happening, we think. And then we all got sent home. We all got sent home because they learned, again, like I said, there were more than one target. And Independence Hall and the Constitution Center, where last night's debate was actually, was one of the targets. And the Constitution Center had just opened. It's right across the street from, I don't know who it's named after, but the Philadelphia Federal Building and the Philadelphia Courthouse. The Federal Building is on the corner of 6th and Market, 6th and Arch. And the courthouse is on 6th and Market. Across 6th Street is the Constitution Center. At the south end is Market Street. And across from the Constitution Center at Market is Independence Hall. So, block they have, depending on what side of the building I'm leaving and whatever, right across the street from the Constitution Center and right half a block away from Independence Hall. Knowing that one of the planes, should it make it to the air, was there. An obvious thing was stay by your phones, If you have a mobile on this day, you're going to be using it for work so we can stay in touch. If you have a landline, which everybody else probably had at that time, then, stay by that as well. Turns out the younger office that I was in had been transitioning the lifestyle to not having a landline telephone. Nobody had one. Older agents did. Nerdy ones like me did. I had one outside of my bed in my apartment in Ardsley, like near Jenkintown. And so they said, well, you're the duty agent and you get a phone. Go home and sit on your bed. And I spent the rest of the day in on the phone. I got to be careful what I say here. On the phone with intelligence services within our own country that I promise you've never heard of. And with other intelligence services that you've seen, that you know exist, but didn't know was an intelligence service. It's weird. And I'm getting this over a landline telephone, which we were not supposed to be using. But at that point, it's all we had. And I'm getting these briefings and then calling my boss and giving him the same information. And that didn't last all day, to be honest. It probably lasted till mid-afternoon. Because by that point, everything was grounded, was confirmed to be grounded. And so our bosses could go back to the office and use what's called a STU phone, a couple different spellings, acronyms, abbreviations, pronunciations. That's a secure line. Hey, I see you on Chatter. I'm not only on Chatter, I'm also on the radio, and I'm on other social media. And because I don't have the desktop version of Chatter, I can't add it to my computer. So I see your hand raised. I'd love to bring you up and talk, but nobody's going to be able to hear you because the lavalier mic only takes my voice from where it's also this studio mic. And that's it. So I'm sorry about that. If you know Nelson and everybody that own and operate Chatter, tell them to get Yerg's, the desktop version, so I can get them to 4 million plus more people. Actually, more than that with Atlanta and London. So sorry about that, but continue to enjoy the 9/11 stories, please. You can text me, actually email Yergz, YERGZ, at yergz.com. The spelling is right below my picture. Thanks for joining us. So that's the phone that you see in the background of the camera. I got some listeners there finally. And so that was my September 11th. I would finish the week. Our duty weeks started on Tuesday, and that was September 11th that year. And like I said, that was my very first day in my career as a duty agent. And it was, so before my week ended, I caught a trip to DC to take part in the newly created, in fact, it was just tested the week prior, the newly created expansion of White House security in the event of, say, for example, 9/11. They just designed it. They just did what's called a tabletop exercise, and they just practiced it. And less than a week later, they're putting it into use. And that's where we take the perimeter of the White House complex and extend it out in all directions for purposes of increasing heightened security. If you know the White House complex, you know that it's between 15th and 17th Street on the east and west, and then G Street on the north side of Lafayette Park to the north. So it goes G Street, Lafayette Park, Pennsylvania Avenue, north lawn of the White House, south lawn, E Street. E is an echo. F is kind of in the middle, and it doesn't go through the house at all. And then the Ellipse, which is another big park area with a driveway that White House people park in. And then Constitution is at the bottom of that, to the south. The Ellipse was closed. Even more so, E Street was closed. And 17th was closed. And 18th or 19th, it was a couple blocks west and down to 13th or 14th to the east. And G Street was also moved further north. So G Street was closed between those two numbered streets. And the church is right there at G. And I think Jackson Place, one of the two side streets that is the east or west border of Lafayette Park. And that's where the church is, across G Street, where Trump held the Bible upside down. So the north end of that, to the north. And of course, they need extra bodies to do this. So they pulled people from around local field offices, Philadelphia being driving distance enough. We took our G rides, stayed at a nice hotel in Georgetown, and I was standing in the middle. By that point, by the time we got there, it was a week after the attack. By the time we got there, the security perimeter had been pulled back. So now only to the west, 17th Street was closed. The sidewalk on the west side of the street was open to pedestrian traffic. The east side was not. You had to have a White House pass or one of the known federal agencies like the Treasury Department or something that was in one of the office buildings to get into that perimeter. I mean, imagine if that's where you worked. Starbucks, McDonald's, 17th Street had the McDonald's that Bill Clinton used to frequent. Closed. Can't get there today for a week. And then when all that started finally opening up, everybody kind of realized, hey, we could have used this for the past week. So I'm standing out in the middle of 17th Street and Pennsylvania Avenue. And I forget what they called it, but we have different types of dress codes for assignments. Business is what you see most of the time when you see us on CNN. That's what we call the game jersey, suit and tie, nice hair, sunglasses, earpiece, etc., etc. Then business casual, still a sport coat, but it's an open collar. There's no tie. And you don't even have to be in a suit. You can be in like khakis and a sport coat for business casual. And neat casual, which is khakis and like a golf shirt. But of course, the golf shirt can't be tucked in because you got some gear on to cover. And if you're on a shift for him, you're also wearing a ballistic vest. So it's got to be a bigger shirt so you don't look too stupid. And then for George W., they had already created what's called a degree of dress called ranch wear. That's where we could basically wear jeans. because we were in the woods at his ranch. Jeans, boots, whatever upper body dress we felt to be appropriate. If we wanted to wear long sleeves because we're in the woods, that's fine. But it was like pullovers, sweatshirts, although it was Crawford, Texas, so that wasn't quite as frequent, although it did get cold there. And so we were kind of a mix between, I think they called it tactical wear. I don't remember specifically, but it was something like that, meaning that it was essentially a cross between ranch wear minus the jeans. Had to be something nicer, and that's where cargo pants became popular for us. And not quite the neat casual. We're not going to a golf outing. You're on the street in a tactical situation. And that was the other thing. We wore our external ballistic vests, a raid vest, like you see so many police departments today. And I think it's a good thing. The whole nice uniform look for a police officer is just not practical. Not to be on the street. This type of wear, cargo pants, BDUs, and the ballistic vest on the outside, it's so much more comfortable. I mean, you still know you're wearing a vest, but if you have a normal fitted shirt underneath, it's just so much more practical, so much more comfortable, and allows you to be a lot less restricted, distracted, during the course of the day, with adjusting the vest constantly, like we do in a suit. And there I was with that vest, Secret Service, police markings, cargo pants, hiking boots, and a shotgun in the middle of Pennsylvania Avenue and 17th Street. At the time, one of the White House correspondents was somebody you'll see in the next couple of months, John King from CNN. He walks past me in a suit and tie from the waist up. Jeans and sneakers from the waist down. And he sees the really confused look on my face when I see that dress code. He just starts giggling because he gets it, and it makes sense because when you're on camera, you're like the chest up. You're not even at the waist. So why wear a suit and dress shoes when you're going to be running around getting stories? And especially then, there's a lot of running around, a lot of different stories, a lot of different people you needed to talk to, and dress shoes are not good for that. I don't blame them. And I learned all that from my uniform division counterparts that were with me at that spot, who are there every day. He kind of giggles, he smiles, walks past me, and now with just a straight, very gracious look in his face, he just said, "Thank you." All right. My pleasure, is what I think I mumbled out. But I got that from a lot of people that day. From standing. Now, the vehicle checkpoint to get into the complex via 17th and Pennsylvania has been moved out closer to 17th Street in the spot where I was standing. It was further back, closer to the White House back in 2001. And they just pushed all those checkpoints out as far as practically possible so that they got the space on Pennsylvania Avenue. And that spot is called North Park 17 because the whole area is like a park, and it's on the north side at 17th Street. And that's a park, North Park, South Park, are checkpoints. Vehicle checkpoints are entry places where you can get in with a vehicle if you've got the pass to enter the property, the vehicle. And then it was during that 2 or 3 week trip to DC that, like I said, I was staying in Georgetown. And actually, you know what? We did have two-way pagers by 9/11. We did have two-way pagers. And two things that make me remember that we did was one of my bosses, who would be my boss when I left the Philadelphia field office for San Francisco, was at that time a boss in New York. And because the cell phone towers were on the towers, nobody had cell phone coverage throughout all of that part of the tri-state area. New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, or on the other side, they call it New York, New Jersey, and Connecticut. The SkyTel two-way pagers are via satellite. That little dinky pager with a small keyboard on it hits a satellite. And I always thought we should have kept them even when we got cell phones for that reason. So they're conversing with headquarters, the bosses were, via text message on these SkyTel pagers. Well, they would also use them from a computer because your phone number, it was, first of all, it was an 800 number. So I had an 800 phone number just for me. But then that was my username, that phone number. And so it was also 877, I forget what the first three were, but my last four digits were 8007. Yeah, you can imagine I played that up on occasion. So they would use these because they would enter these in batches, meaning that they could cut and paste an entire team of these phone numbers and put them into an email address, because it would be, well, first of all, there was a website that you could send a message via, and then you could also email somebody. So my email address for that device was my 10-digit number at SkyTel. Sky is in like where the planes fly. Tel, TEL.com. And so they would create massive lists of everybody, all of us, for example, that were working at the White House complex that day. They would create massive lists for send one email to all these people, and we get updates on certain messages and situations, like Vice President is coming in through perhaps North Park 17 in 10 minutes. We know if we were at that post, the armored cars coming in there are actually the Vice President. One of the messages that we got was that the FAA and the White House and really the task force of agencies operating the government that day, that period, lifted the travel ban, the restriction, the ungrounded flights. So we knew You're going to start seeing airplanes in the air again. I was, I think, on midnights because it was daytime when this happened. And I was up and going to get food or bookstore that was open then. Um, they don't have any. They're all out of business. But a bookstore, clothing store getting more khakis or cargos or whatever. And I saw one of the first flights fly over Georgetown out of Reagan Airport. And everybody just puckered because they didn't know that it had been deemed safe to fly again. And part of that safety declaration were the new security restrictions at checkpoints. No more nail files. Up to that point, you could actually take a knife on the plane with you. A lot of private security people did that. And when they said, "Oh, you can't have that on the plane," I'm like, "Really? You're going to cut me out of my seatbelt?" And then they'd be, "Well, okay." So, yeah, I saw that. Soon after, business as usual. I would make it back to DC a couple more times during the Bush administration because he also signed an executive order expanding the protection on his family. And when I say his family, I mean his nieces and nephews, his brothers and sister, Doro, everybody. And so we had obviously not as big of a detail as what he had, but protection details, security details on the entire family. And so I'd come back a couple more times during my time in Philly, during the whole, I don't remember how long these extended security details were in place, but it was at least 2 more trips because I was on Doro for one. I was on his brother for one, not Jeb, but one of the other ones, Paul, I think, or I forget, but not Jeb, but one of the other brothers. And I think there might have been a third one because I was on one of the kids too, one of Doro's kids, at least 3 times. And then kind of sort of got back to normal. Airport security has never been the same since, obviously, and it shouldn't be. But we lost one employee that day. Craig Miller was not a special agent. He was what's called a special officer. He is also gun carrying personnel. They usually have some other sort of specialty. In his case, he was a medic. He was working midnights for security at the UN because also September had the UN meeting. That's every year. That was delayed to November. This was impressive. That was delayed until November. Everything, all the planning that was at the south end of the city would have been in the field office and was lost in the collapsing of the towers. Now, we have other office space in New York. I don't know if it's still in place in the same fashion now because the field office has been moved to Brooklyn as a result of 9/11. But we rented, I can't say where, I can't say the name of the building or whatever, anything like that. That's not disclosed. We have other office space up in Midtown. And that office space is nothing but logistics for the UN meeting. I had to think there for a second. For the UN meeting. That's all those people do. And so when the UN meeting happens, of course, it's very high energy area. And then right after the UN meeting, that's when those people take a good chunk of their annual leave and get the hell out. Of course, they take like holidays and things like that too. But when they come back from that 2 or 3 weeks of using leave in October, right back at the following year's UN meeting and planning for that. So, yeah, I mean, I was pretty impressed. The UN meeting happened that year, I think, October or November. It wasn't too much later. So when you consider all the work that had to be, in some cases, redone, or at least reprinted, or briefly redone, depending on the status of it and condition of it. And then went off without a hitch. There was another plane crash out of LaGuardia, but it was unrelated to terrorism. I think it was confirmed that birds got in the engine, like larger enough birds to screw up the engine and cut the engine, and it crashed in wherever downfield from the flight line. But yeah, that was my September 11th and the rest of 2001. I got to take a break. Thank George for whether you liked him as a president or not. You know, he was at least enough of 90% of a leader we needed at that time. You know, maybe telling people to go shopping could have been worded differently by somebody else. But point being, when he said that, it was time to get back to your life. And that's what eventually happened. 99.1 WDJY 1490. We'll be back with them a couple days a week, later this month. WTAN will be joining us. We're still with America One Radio, the UG.media, Rainbow Radio, Yerg's Radio, and the rest of the Mastiff Media Network. I got to take a break. We'll be back after this. Smell nasty. Do you want to freshen it up a little bit? Go to aromabypeter.com. Check out all of Peter's candles. It's what we burn here in Studio Yerg's. I'm burning right now leather scented candle. That's right, leather scented. So go to aromabypeter.com/Yerg's and check out his candles today.
I'm Jane Stahl, retired English teacher, and with my BFF, Susan Bebeck, we manage Studio B Fine Art Gallery in Boyertown, Pennsylvania. We showcase the art of hundreds of local artists, publish books of the poetry, prose, and art of local writers, offer classes, art parties, workshops, discussion groups, cater dinners. We've even hosted a wedding. And we're here to be the go-to place for friendship, learning, and fun in our community. Virtual tours of our exhibits are available right here on Yerg's Radio. Let us introduce you to some amazing art and artists.
Check out Jane Stahl and everyone at Studio B in Boyertown, Pennsylvania. Please visit our YouTube channel, Talk TV 24. How's your website doing? I'll tell you how mine's doing. It's awesome. Yergs.com is got to be the best website for anybody in podcasting or any sort of broadcast solo journalist like me. How did I get that? Limit Break Digital. Limit Break Digital did my website with Yergs.com. They did YergerGroup.com. They take care of my marketing, my branding, and help me get the message out to you. Go to limitbreakdigital.com/Yergs for 10% off your next project. That's a $3,000 site, yergs.com. And you can get 10% off that by just going to limitbreakdigital.com/yergs today. Talk to Jay. That's my guy. We all got a guy, and Jay's mine. limitbreakdigital.com. Hey, gang, it's Yergs. Right now, our country is about to embark on yet another controversial presidential election. I have an actual question, legitimate question, as a political scientist and historian by education. If you are a Trump supporter, I want to hear from you. I want to know what your appeal to Donald Trump is at this time. Please email me news, N-E-W-Z, at yergs.com. News, N-E-W-Z, at yergz.com. Thanks. Participants must be willing to provide their contact information, answer a series of questions, and then have their first name broadcast over the radio and social media relevant to Up the Middle. So apparently, whoever joined me on Chatter on my phone also has a room going on, and they'd like me to share my story. I'm like, well, I got a radio show here, and then I got things to do the rest of the afternoon. All right, 99.1 WDJY, America One Radio, and the rest of Massive Media Network. It's 11:53. Let's wrap up with a quick recap of last night. So I thought I opened some of these nuts. Well, let's share this way then. Do this. Share the entire screen. And for those of you watching, or for those of you listening, I'll do good by you. So everybody is coming back now. If you see, like I'm just Googling stories on, last night's debate. And first of all, the fact checkers were busier than a one-legged man in an ass-kicking contest. One-legged person. I think Fox is unique. Yahoo News, Trump-Harris presidential debate, live updates, fact checks, and reaction. That was from last night. Also from last night, the Boston Globe. I look at false and misleading claims made during Trump and Harris's debate. CNN, odious. Daniel Dale fact checks Trump claim about Haitian immigrants. Debate fact check, Harris and Trump on the economy, immigration and abortion. That's the New York Times. Bloomberg says Trump and Harris's debate remarks on economic policy. Fact checked. All these are from last night, from 1 hour ago. Fact checking presidential debate between Harris and Trump. That's NBC. Fox. Let's see what they got. ABC presidential debate, moderators David Muir and Lindsay Davis fact check Trump 5 times. 0 for Harris. Trump needed to be fact checked more than 5 times. Let's be clear about that. Harris was misleading on some things as well. But while we're being clear, when you're on the spot like that, as rehearsed as they both were, although Trump miserably failed at trying to stay on script, they were, once you say something that's out there And maybe it's not the way you would have had it written for a teleprompter, but you don't have a teleprompter. How is ABC? Hold on. ABC is making a huge mistake trying to fact check this live. They're only proving how biased they are. Okay. Because Ari Fleischer, you Republican for speaking of Bush, yeah, well, she should have. ABC's Lindsay Davis raises eyebrows with abortion fact check against Trump, completely interjects herself. Good. He needed it. The one thing that I was really disappointed about, and we're going to talk about this on Friday when the guys get back. They said that the mics were going to be cut. They said that once that was cut, and once they said it was time to move on, they were moving on. I don't know how many times Trump said, wait a minute, I need to address this one thing. Wait a minute, I need to, and blah, 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 whatever. Kept going. They left his mic on. I counted, and maybe there were more, but I counted one time where Kamala Harris tried to aggressively say, I want to come back and address and she got cut off. So don't tell me, Ari, who I met, not a bad guy, that ABC was biased just against your boy. And why you, of all people, aren't one of the 200 plus that have rightfully jumped ship. That's pretty sad. All right, 11:59. That's it for today. 99.1 WDJY. I want to thank everybody from Atlanta and also from America One Radio, also based out of Atlanta. 1490 will be back on Friday. The UG.media will be back on Friday. Rainbow Radio, Yerg's Radio, always here with us, and the rest of the Mastiff Media Network. That's it. We'll see you again tomorrow. Thanks, guys.